Well, the Knox President's home, it was an Avery home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had the Avery manufacturing in Peoria.
Yeah.
And they, one time, were Peoria's largest employer. And the way that happened, the distilleries and breweries had been the big ones in Peoria. Well, Prohibition came along, and it's about another almost 10 years before Caterpillar gets going.
Yeah.
So in that little span of time, the Averies were the biggest, and they made the big steam traction engines, they made cultivating equipment, everything you could imagine that could be pulled by a tractor.
Yeah.
Well, they did it all. They had a big factory, and when Cyrus Minor Avery knew he was going to retire, he wanted to come back to Galesburg. Now, his brother did not. His brother's buried in Springdale Cemetery. Mm-hmm. They liked their ties to Peoria better. There are two brothers that formed the Avery Manufacturing Company, and one of them is Robert Hanneman Avery. Mm-hmm. And he went to the Knox Academy, but about the time he would have gone to the college, the Civil War came along, and he went off to war. Well, he got captured, and he was at Andersonville. And you know, if you've seen pictures of Andersonville prisoners, you know what I'm talking about. He came out physically in very, very rough condition.
Yeah.
So anyway, but while he's in prison, he keeps himself occupied with a stick in the dirt, and he's drawing designs for farm machinery.
Huh.
This is something that, it's a gift.
Yeah.
That he can do this because he has no formal education in engineering or anything. But anyway, so he keeps his mind occupied, probably a very good thing to do. Mm-hmm. And he actually gets a patent for a corn stalk shredder after the fields, you know, after the corn is dead and you've picked it and all, you got to get rid of the stalks. Well, the best thing to do is plow them in the ground. They don't plow in too easily, they're tough. Well, he designs a shredder, and then they can be plowed into the ground. So he has a patent. Well, in the meantime, Cyrus Minor Avery, his younger brother, is too young. Yeah, he's a little too young for the Civil War, because he's only 15 when the war broke out. So he didn't go to the war, he went to the college. He got his degree from Knox College, and he also starts becoming involved in businesses in Galesburg. First, I think buying grain and buying coal, buying and selling a little bit, maybe even lumber, and so he's developing business skills. Yeah. Well, the brother who got out of Andersonville thought that if he went west, it would be better for him. He went out to Kansas. Health wasn't too good, and farming didn't work out in Kansas. Mm-hmm. So, but he has a patent, and his brother's got the business skills. Yeah. So they kind of put the two and two together here, and they form a company, starting out here in Galesburg and having other foundries make the parts for them and so forth, but they started their business in Galesburg. Well, they had ideas to become big, and they approached the people of the city of Galesburg. What can you do to invest in us so that we can really grow our company? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how the conversation went, but it didn't go too well, but people in Peoria heard about it. Mm-hmm. And people in Peoria gave them huge tract of land that became called Averyville, gave them money to build their factory. So people of Peoria took a great interest. Yeah. So that's where they built their big factory. And that's where they became, at one point, the largest employer in Peoria. And Robert Hanneman Avery lived out the rest of his life in Peoria, and he's buried at Springdale Cemetery in Peoria, where Cyrus M. Avery decided in his retirement he wanted to come back to Galesburg. And so that's when he built the big home that is now the Knox College President's home. And he didn't die. He died before, I don't know if he ever actually lived in it. He died in 1905, and that's the year it was built. He may never have actually gotten to live in it. Sure. But anyway, that's the story of the Averys.
Yeah.
And, yes, go ahead.
Did the home directly pass from the Averys?
No,
to
there were
the
several.
college?
No, there were other owners in between, and I can't give you all the names, but one of the families that lived there were the Ingersolls, and they're associated with Knox College. Sometimes it's called the Ingersoll House.
It is.
And they lived there, and the Ingersolls, actually, the reason they ended up in Galesburg and associated with Knox College is because of the Averys. The Averys were Congregationalists. Cyrus M. Avery went to some convention of Congregationalists. Sure. Well, Ingersolls at that point had a factory south, so not deep southern Illinois, but farther south. Well, they wanted to grow, but they didn't think that the town was really right for them to grow. There's a limited amount of labor available, so on and so forth. Well, Avery, he promotes, hey, what about Galesburg? Well, we went to Peoria, but there's still opportunity in Galesburg. So the Ingersolls then built a company called Coulter Disc, which was an agricultural company. We got a lot of agricultural history here. And so then the Ingersolls, they're in that. They get involved in the disc that's used on the plow because they got this background in metallurgy. And they come up with a type of steel that is hard enough to cut and remain sharp on the edge, but not so brittle. The others that hardened their steel would have something brittle and it would break or chip. Well, they came up with an alloy and a method of heat treatment, actually, that gave them a superior product. Yeah. So they sold their Coulter disc to other plow makers. And then, of course, it goes on from there. After Coulter disc closes and Galesburg, they move on and eventually become involved with Borg Warner and one of the Ingersolls was actually talking about Japan, was ambassador to Japan while I studied in Japan. Yeah, it was one of the Ingersoll families, a Knox alum. Yeah, he was over in Japan.
Are the Ingersolls, are any of them buried here, or are they all elsewhere?
I can't think of any buried. Not in Hope Cemetery, and I'm thinking of our other older cemeteries. I don't think so.